Gordie Howe is exactly the right name for a bridge that connects Detroit and Windsor, because Gordie Howe was a bridge. He was Canadian to his core, prairie tough in the way you can only be when you're raised in Saskatchewan, modest, collective before individual, the kind of greatness that never needed to announce itself. And yet the fullest expression of Gordie Howe's greatness unfolded in the United States, in a Detroit Red Wings jersey, where he became not just an imported star, but a civic institution. Gordie Howe did not shed his Canadian identity by playing hockey in America. He proved how durable and exportable his Canadian identity was. He showed how Canadian values, grit, fairness, endurance, team-first leadership could take root in American soil and flourish. And flourish he did for an almost unfathomable length of time. Gordie Howe played 26 seasons in the NHL and 32 professional seasons overall, competing productively into his early 50s, not as a novelty, but as a legitimate player. For decades, he held the NHL records for most games played, most goals scored, most point records that were so vast they felt untouchable. They were, by the way, eventually broken, but only by Wayne Gretzky, himself a fellow Canadian and the greatest offensive player the sport has ever known. Now that matters. Howe wasn't just durable, he wasn't just skilled, he was complete. He was a scorer, a playmaker, a physical force, and a leader. The prototype of the modern power forward before the term even existed. For decades, Gordie Howe crossed a border that wasn't drawn on a map but lived in culture, in commerce, and in sport. He made Detroit feel a little more Canadian, and Canada feel deeply invested in Detroit on both sides of the storied Detroit River. Fans on either bank claimed him without hesitation or qualification. That kind of shared ownership is rare, and it's earned. That's why the Gordie Howe International Bridge matters. This bridge is not just a bridge of steel and concrete spanning water. This bridge is a declaration of interdependence. It is a six-lane, state-of-the-art artery built to modernize and protect the most valuable land-based trading corridor in the world. It links highway to highway, adding long overdue redundancy to an aging system. It moves goods faster, it lowers costs, it keeps the North American supply chain alive, the cars, the food, the medicine, and the machinery that flow daily on both sides of the Detroit River. Which is why the political kerfuffle around this bridge is so unsettling. When Donald Trump threatened to delay or meddle with its opening, to treat it as leverage in a trade or political dispute, that is not toughness, it is recklessness. This is a once-in-a-generation piece of infrastructure, financed by Canada, built with American labor and materials, and designed to benefit both nations equally. It is not a prop. It is not a talking point. It is the circulatory system of a shared economy. And here's the truth that cuts through the noise. When you interfere with infrastructure like this, you're not punishing Canada. You're not punishing Michigan Democrats. You're punishing auto workers in Ontario and Ohio, truck drivers in Michigan and Quebec, farmers, manufacturers, small businesses, and families on both sides of the Detroit River, on both sides of the American-Canadian border. You're punishing everyone who depends on the quiet, unglamorous, indispensable work of connection. Gordie Howe understood connection instinctively. He spent a lifetime proving that borders don't have to divide to matter. They can bind, they can strengthen, they can endure. A player whose records required Wayne Gretzky to surpass them. A Canadian icon who became an American legend, a true and complete athlete. That is what this bridge is meant to do. Joining me now, Fred Hochberg, former chair and president of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, is the author of a great book called Trade is Not a Four-Letter Word, written long before everybody in America talked about trade all the time. And Mitch Landrieu hasn't been on the show for a long time, served as senior advisor and infrastructure coordinator for the Biden administration, where he was responsible for coordinating and implementing the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, and he's the former mayor of New Orleans. So you guys are the perfect guys to have here for this conversation. Thank you for being with us this morning. Fred, let me start with you. I wanted a nice excuse to talk about hockey in Canada this morning, but this is using infrastructure projects as leverage is a really bad idea generally, and it's not the same. Like, you can tariff whoever you want, but at least build the damn bridges and the ports and the airports so that when somebody more sensible comes along, you can still continue to do the trade that you need to do.
I mean, the challenge is infrastructure takes a long time. This bridge was started in 2018. The idea for the bridge started a decade before that with Governor Rick Snyder. who was someone I worked with closely when I chaired the Export-Import Bank. So these take a long time. So interrupting them or threatening to close them at the last minute, as with the Gateway Tunnel under the Hudson River, is the exact opposite of what you need to do with infrastructure. Infrastructure takes steadiness, resolve, yes, a lot of money, and it makes us all more productive.
And Mitch, I'm glad that Fred talked about the Gateway Tunnel. Not something everybody knows about, like the bridge. It's a tunnel that moves commuter rail between Manhattan and New Jersey. Again, it's when you mess with things like this, you're not messing with Democrats or the Democratic governor of New York or the Democratic mayor of New York or the Democratic mayor of New Jersey. Everybody uses these tunnels. Everybody uses these bridges or benefits from them.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I love the intro, tying hockey to all of this stuff. But essentially what you have is a president that's governing in chaos, governing in corruption, incompetence, and cruelty. And so when he wants to get back at his enemies or he wants to protect his friends, essentially what he does is he raises the cost and cost everybody in America, no matter where they live, a lot. And he's actually tried to do it now with infrastructure. So you may remember that for 50 years, the country tried to put together an infrastructure proposal because we are woefully way behind. And so we were able to do that during the Biden years with the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, and the infrastructure funding. And it was designed to put money on the ground, to build things for people that they needed, to create manufacturing jobs, and to push the economy and jobs and wages up. And of course, it succeeded. We have 73,000 projects going on right now. But unfortunately, what President Trump has decided to do is to punish people he doesn't like and start to close, whether they're energy grid plants, FEMA resilience projects, battery plants, the Gateway Infrastructure Project, which, by the way, is the biggest in the history of the country. It was a $16 billion check that we delivered there. And President Biden said to me very clearly many times, listen, get this money to the ground as quickly as possible and make sure it goes everywhere, red states, blue states, because he represented everybody in the country, yep, irrespective of what their political views are. And so what you see now is manufacturing jobs gone down. Last year, the Trump administration created 181,000 jobs, which is like nothing in comparison to what has been done historically. And so this is not helping anybody, much less the working men and women of America who need it the most.
Fred, right now, Americans would be forgiven to thinking that tariffs are the most central discussion in trade, but they're absolutely not. To trade effectively with other people, you need working ports and workers for them. You need working rail. You need working highways. You need working bridges. You need working tunnels. You need, a whole bunch of things, including this international bridge. I mean, this bridge in Detroit is not your average bridge. It's a bridge that goes across the river, and that in combination with the tunnel and another bridge in Detroit are more goods go across that bridge than any other border anywhere on Earth.
If we want to compete with China, and China is who we should be competing with, they have first-rate infrastructure because they want to get those goods to market cheaply and efficiently. That's exactly what we should be doing as well. And I think something Mitch said is often politicians don't like infrastructure because they don't get credit. They take so long that they don't actually reap the credit. They don't get to cut the ribbon. The guy who initiates is President Biden with a lot of the bipartisan infrastructure bills. So that's frequently a problem. But here we are, particularly in the Gordie Howe Bridge, we're about to opening this year. Donald Trump can sit there and cut the ribbon and get all the accolades for it, even though it happened way before it actually did start under his first administration.
And Mitch, it's interesting because when you think about the Hoover Dam, right? I guess Hoover gets credit for that. That's a big. You think about the highways and you think about Eisenhower. I mean, these are massive, massive issues that don't seem forefront in our politics. But as a former mayor, you understand that everybody who votes for you and doesn't vote for you, if you built an infrastructure project in New Orleans, benefits from it. Same thing with the Gateway project, right? Like, this is not so much commerce goes over that bridge in Detroit and through the Gateway Tunnel. Will go through the Gateway Tunnel. It affects everybody, whether you use that bridge or that tunnel or not.
Well, first of all, bridges are a great metaphor because clearly we're better together and we need bridges to get from one side to the next, and they help create jobs, but they also get people to and from work and to synagogue or church and have them pick your kids up, and not the least of which is commerce. And there are many other bridges like that particular bridge that we rely on to get goods from ships onto trucks, onto the roads, and then into your house where you need it. But at the end of the day, listen, I took over after Katrina hit. We had to rebuild the city. they take a long time, and you may not get credit for it, but that doesn't mean you don't have to do it. The health of the nation and the health of workers depends on us staying steady. This is the first time in 50 years we've put this kind of money on the ground, and it is working. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why any president would want to interrupt those things, short of just wanting to piss people off and hurt people who maybe didn't vote for you. That's why chaos and corruption and incompetence actually cost people. The thing you didn't mention is one of the reasons why Trump stuck his nose in this thing is he's got a friend that owns another bridge right next door that is going to get hurt by it. That guy visited the White House, and Trump made this audacious decision to say, let me help him out a little bit and hurt everybody else just to help my friend. So we're talking about bad governance here. We're talking about bad ideas that hurt everybody. We're all better together, all of us, red, blue, white, Republican, Democrat. We do better when we invest in building things that help people create jobs and get to and from where they're going and help grow the economy. We ought to be doing more of it, not less, and we ought to be doing it faster, not slower.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out that there's always an angle to why Trump does this stuff. But I appreciate you guys. Great conversation. We should have this more often. Fred Hochberg is the former chairman and president of the Export-Import Bank of the United States. Mitch Landrieu is a former senior advisor and infrastructure coordinator under President Joe Biden and former mayor of New Orleans.